Rich Dad Poor Dad: What the Rich Teach Their Kids A Circumflex About Money, that the poor and middle class do not, by Robert Kiyosaki. To parents everywhere, A Circumflex, a child's first and most important teachers, and to all those who educate, A Circumflex influence, and lead by example. Music. Acknowledgements. How does a person say thank you, A Circumflex, when there are so many people to thank? Obviously this book is a thank you to my two fathers who, A Circumflex, were powerful role models, and to my mom who taught me love and kindness. The person most responsible, A Circumflex, for this book becoming a reality is my wife Kimmy, partner in marriage, business, and A Circumflex in life. She makes my life complete. Introduction. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Having two dads, A Circumflex, offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. A Circumflex. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. Was highly educated and intelligent. He had a Circumflex PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. He then went on to A Circumflex Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his advanced A Circumflex studies, all on full financial scholarships. Other father never finished the 8th grade. A Circumflex. Both men were successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial A Circumflex incomes, yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men, A Circumflex, in Hawaii. One died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family charities and his A Circumflex church. The other left bills to be paid. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. A Circumflex. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in A Circumflex education, but did not recommend the same course of study. If I had had only one dad, I would have, A Circumflex, had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of A Circumflex view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man, instead of simply accepting or rejecting one or A Circumflex the other. I found myself thinking more, comparing, and then choosing for myself. The problem was that A Circumflex, the rich man, was not rich yet, and the poor man was not yet poor. Both were just starting out, A Circumflex, on their careers, and both were struggling with money and families, but they had very A Circumflex different points of view about money. For example, one dad would say the love of money, A Circumflex, is the root of all evil. The other said the lack of money is the root of all evil. As a young boy, A Circumflex, having two strong fathers both influencing me was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, A Circumflex, but the two fathers did not say the same things. The contrast in their points of view, particularly A Circumflex about money, was so extreme that I grew curious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long, A Circumflex, periods of time about what each was saying. Much of my private time was spent, A Circumflex, reflecting, asking myself questions such as why does he say that, and then asking A Circumflex the same question of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, A Circumflex, yeah, he's right, I agree with that, or to simply reject the point off you by saying the old A Circumflex man doesn't know what he's talking about. Instead, having two dads whom I loved forced me, A Circumflex, to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned A Circumflex out to be much more valuable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single A Circumflex point of view. One of the reasons the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle A Circumflex class struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home, not in school. Most of A Circumflex us learn about money from our parents. So what can poor parents tell their child about money? A Circumflex. They simply say stay in school and study hard. The child may graduate with excellent grades, A Circumflex, but with a poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. A Circumflex schools focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains, A Circumflex, how smart bankers, doctors, and accountants warned excellent grades may struggle financially. A Circumflex. All of their lives are staggering. National debt is due in large part to highly educated A Circumflex politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little or no training, A Circumflex, in the subject of money. Today I often wonder what will soon happen when we have millions of A Circumflex people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the A Circumflex government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? A Circumflex. How will a nation survive if teaching children about money continues to be left to parents, most A Circumflex of whom will be or already are poor? Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both A Circumflex of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so I gained valuable insight into the A Circumflex power and effect of one's thoughts on one's life. For example, one dad had a habit of saying I can't, A Circumflex, afford it. The other dad forbade those words to be used. He insisted I ask how can I afford it? A Circumflex. One is a statement, and the other is a question on lets you off the hook, and the other forces you, A Circumflex, to think. My soon-to-be rich dad would explain that be automatically saying the words I can't afford, A Circumflex, your brain stops working by asking the question how can I afford it. Your brain is put to work. He, A Circumflex, did not mean that you should buy everything you want, was fanatical about exercising your A Circumflex mind, the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say my brain gets stronger every day because A Circumflex I exercise it, the stronger it gets, the more money can make. He believed that automatically saying A Circumflex I can't afford it was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed, A Circumflex, that when dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, in A Circumflex, The other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long-term result was that a circumflex one dad grew stronger financially, and the other grew weaker. It is not much a circumflex different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on a regular basis versus someone a circumflex, who sits on the couch watching television. Proper physical exercise increases your chances. A circumflex for health and proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth. My two dads had opposing a circumflex attitudes, and that affected the way they thought. One dad thought that the rich should pay more a circumflex in taxes to take care of those less fortunate. The other said taxes punish those who a circumflex produce and reward those who don't produce. One dad recommended study hard so you a circumflex can find a good company to work for. The other recommended study hard so you a circumflex can find good company to buy. One dad said the reason I'm not rich is because I have you a circumflex kids. The other said the reason I must be rich is because I have you kids. One encouraged talking a circumflex about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject a circumflex of money to be discussed over a meal. One said when it comes to money play a circumflex it safe. Don't take risks. The other said learn to manage risk. One believed our home is a circumflex our largest investment and our greatest asset. The other believed my house is a liability. And if your a circumflex house is your largest investment, you're in trouble. Both dads paid their bills on time, yet one a circumflex paid his bills first, while the other paid his bills last. One dad believed in a company or a circumflex, the government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about pay raises, a circumflex retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed a circumflex with two of his uncles who joined the military and earned a retirement and entitlement package, a circumflex for life after 20 years of active service. He loved the idea of medical benefits and PX a circumflex privileges. Military provided its retirees, also loved the tenure system available a circumflex through the university. The idea of job protection for life and job benefits a circumflex seemed more important at times than the job. He would often say I've worked hard for the a circumflex government, and I'm entitled to these benefits. The other believed in total financial self-reliance a circumflex. He spoke out against the entitlement mentality and how it created weak and financially needy people a circumflex. He was emphatic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars. The other a circumflex created investments. One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume so I could find a good job a circumflex. The other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so I could create jobs. Being a circumflex, a product of two strong dads, allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts a circumflex have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts. For a circumflex example, my poor dad always said I'll never be rich, and that prophesied became reality. My rich dad a circumflex, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. He would say things like I'm a rich man a circumflex, and rich people don't do this. Even when he was flat broke after a major financial setback, he a circumflex continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by s. Eyeing their a circumflex is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, a circumflex poor is eternal. My poor dad would say I'm not interested in money, or money doesn't a circumflex matter. My rich dad always said money is power. The power of our thoughts may never be measured a circumflex or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that it was important to be aware a circumflex of my thoughts and how I expressed myself. He noticed that my poor dad was poor, not a circumflex because of the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts a circumflex and actions. As a young boy having two fathers, I became acutely aware of being careful about a circumflex, which thoughts I chose to adopt as my own. Should I listen to my rich dad or to my poor a circumflex dad? Although both men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed a circumflex about what they thought was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree, and a circumflex get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study to become a professional, an attorney, or an a circumflex accountant, and to go to business school for my MBA. Other encouraged me to study to be rich, to a circumflex understand how money works, and to learn how to have it work for me. I don't work for money were a circumflex words he would repeat over and over. Money works for me. At the age of 9, I decided to listen a circumflex to and learn from my rich dad about money. In doing so, it goes not to listen to my poor dad, even a circumflex, though he was the one with all the college degrees. A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my a circumflex favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems, my favorite is The Road Not Taken a circumflex. I use its lesson almost daily. The road not taken, two roads diverged in a yellow a circumflex wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as a circumflex far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair a circumflex, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy, and wanted where though as a circumflex, for that the passing there had warned them really about the same, and both that warning equally lay a circumflex in leaves. No step had trodden black. Oh, I kept thefirst for another day, yet knowing how way leads a circumflex on a way I doubt it. If I should ever come back, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere a circumflex ages and ages hence two roads diverged in a wood, and I took one less traveled a circumflex by, and that has made all the difference. And that has made all the difference over a circumflex. The years I have often reflected upon Robert Frost's poem. Choosing not to listen to my acircumflex highly educated dad's advice and attitude about money was a painful decision. But it was acircumflex a decision that shaped the rest of my life. Once I made up my mind about whom to acircumflex listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 acircumflex years. Until I was 39 years old, he stopped once he realized that I knew and fully understood what he acircumflex had been trying to drum into my often thick skull. Money is one form of power, but what is more acircumflex powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how acircumflex money works, you gain power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking acircumflex alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works acircumflex, so they spend their lives working for money. Because I was only 9 years old when I started acircumflex, the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple, and when it was all said and done, there were acircumflex only 6 main lessons repeated over 30 years. This audiobook is about those 6 lessons put as simply as possible, just as simply as acircumflex my rich did put forth those lessons. To meth lessons are meant not to be answers, but guide acircumflex posts that will assist you and your children to grow wealthier no matter what happens in a world acircumflex of increasing change and uncertainty. Chapter 1, Lesson 1: The rich don't work for money, the poor acircumflex, and the middle class work for money, the rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to acircumflex get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today Jimmy's mom acircumflex drove up in their new Cadillac, and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 acircumflex of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were acircumflex poor kids. They did. My dad asked incredulously. Yethy did. I replied in a hurt tone. My dad acircumflex silently shook his head, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading acircumflex the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, acircumflex I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar acircumflex plantation town. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people, such as doctors, business acircumflex owners, and bankers, sent their children to Theis Elementary School after grade 6. Their children acircumflex were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went acircumflex to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, you would have gone to a different acircumflex school with kids from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go acircumflex onto the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or form acircumflex. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly, if you acircumflex want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, acircumflex, he said, smiling. Even then I knew that really meant that's all I'm going to tell you, or I acircumflex don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed the next morning. Acircumflex I told my best friend Mike what my dad had said as best as I. Mike and acircumflex I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was also in this school. By a twist of acircumflex fate, someone had drawn a jog in the line for the school district, and we wound up in school acircumflex with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were, because all the other boys had acircumflex, new baseball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and dad provided us with the basics like food, acircumflex, and shelter and clothes, but that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work acircumflex for it. We wanted things, but there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys acircumflex. So what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I said, but do you want to be my acircumflex partner? He agreed, and so on that Saturday morning Mike became my first business partner. We spent all acircumflex morning coming up with ideas on how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about all the cool guys at acircumflex Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but that hurt was good, because it inspired acircumflex us to keep thinking of a way to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning struck acircumflex. It was an idea Mike got from a science book he had read. Excitedly we shook hands, and the partnership acircumflex now had a business. For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around our neighborhood knocking acircumflex on doors and asking our neighbors if they would save their toothpaste tubes for us. With acircumflex puzzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some asked us what we were doing, to which we acircumflex replied, we can't tell you, it's a business secret. My mom grew distressed as the weeks wore on. We acircumflex had selected a site next to her washing machine as the place we would stockpile our raw acircumflex materials. In a brown cardboard box that at one time held ketchup bottles, our little pile of used acircumflex toothpaste tubes began to grow. Finally, my mom put her foot down. Thesate of her neighbors' messy acircumflex crumpled used toothpaste tubes had got to her. What are you boys doing? She asked. And I don't acircumflex want to hear again that it's a business secreto, something with this mess, or I'm going to acircumflex throw it out. Mike and I pleaded and begged, explaining that we would soon have enough in acircumflex. Then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to acircumflex finish their toothpaste, so we could have their tubes. Mom granted us a 1-week extension. The date acircumflex to begin production was moved up, and the pressure was on. My first partnership was already being acircumflex threatened with an eviction notice by my own mom. It became Mike's job to tell the neighbors to a circumflex quickly use up their toothpaste, saying their dentist wanted them to brush more often anyway. A circumflex I began to put together the production line. One day me dad drove up with a friend to see a circumflex. Two 9-year-old boys in the driveway, with the production line operating at full speed. There was a circumflex fine white powder everywhere. On a long table were small milk cartons from school and our families. A circumflex hibachi grill was glowing with red-hot coals at maximum heat. Dad walked up cautiously, having to a circumflex park the car at the base of the driveway, since the production line blocked the carport. As he and a circumflex his friend got closer, they saw a steel pot sitting on top of the coals, in which the toothpaste a circumflex tubes were being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in plastic tubes. The tubes a circumflex were made of lead. So once the paint was burned off, the tubes were dropped in the small steel pot a circumflex. They melted until they became liquid. And with my mom's potholders, we poured the lead through a circumflex a small hole in the top of the milk cartons. The milk cartons were filled with plaster of a circumflex. Paris white powder was everywhere. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over, and the entire area a circumflex looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk cartons were the outer a circumflex containers for plaster of Paris molds. My dad and his friend watched as we carefully a circumflex poured the molten lead through a small hole in the top of the plaster of Paris cube a circumflex. Careful, my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the a circumflex steel pot down and smiled at my dad. What are you boys doing? He asked with a cautious a circumflex smile. We're doing what you told me to do. We're going to be rich. I said. Yup, said Mike a circumflex, grinning and nodding his head. Where a partner said, what is in those plaster molds? My dad a circumflex asked. Watch, I said. This should be a good batch. With a small hammer, I tapped at the circumflex seal that divided the cube in half. Cautiously, I pulled up the top half of the circumflex plaster mold, and a lead nickel fell out. Oh my god, my dad said. You're casting nickels a circumflex out of lead? That's right, Mike said. We're doing as you told us to do. We're making money. My a circumflex dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head, along with a circumflex a fire and a box of spent toothpaste tubes. In front of him were two little boys covered a circumflex with white dust, smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and sit a circumflex with him on the front step of our house. With a smile, he gently explained what a circumflex, the word counterfeiting, meant. Our dreams were dashed. You mean this is illegal? A circumflex asked Mike in a quivering voice. Let them go. My dad's friends said the a circumflex might be developing a natural talent. My dad glared at him. Yes, it is illegal, my dad said a circumflex gently, but you boys have shown great creativity and original thought. Keep going. I'm really proud a circumflex of you. Disappointed Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up a circumflex our mess. The business was over on opening day. Sweeping the powder up, I looked at Mike and said, I a circumflex guess Jimmy and his friends are right. We're poor. Me father was just leaving. As I said that a circumflex boys, he said, you're only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something a circumflex. Most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. I'm very proud of the a circumflex. Two of you. I will say it again, keep going, don't quit. Mike and I stood there in silence. They were a circumflex nice words, but we still did not know what to do. So how come you're not rich, Dad? I asked. Because a circumflex I chose to be a school teacher. School teachers really didn't think about being rich. We a circumflex just like teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money. A circumflex. Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. I know, said my dad. If you boys want to learn how a circumflex to be rich, don't ask me, talk to your dad. Mike, my dad asked Mike with a scrunched up face. A circumflex. Yeah, your dad, repeated my dad with a smile. Your dad and I have the same banker. A circumflex. And he raves about your father. He's told me several times, Thaddy, your father a circumflex is brilliant. Comes to making money. My dad. Mike asked again in disbelief. Then how come a circumflex we don't have a nice car and a nice house like the rich kids at school? A nice car and a nice house a circumflex don't necessarily mean you're rich, or you know how to make money. My dad replied. Jimmy's dad works a circumflex for the sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the a circumflex government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar company is in financial trouble, and Jimmy's a circumflex. Dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire, and I a circumflex suspect in a few years he will be a very rich man. With that, Mike and I got excited again with new a circumflex vigor. We began cleaning up the mess caused by our no defunct first business. As we were cleaning, we a circumflex made plans for how and when to talk to Mike's dad. The problem was that Mike's dad worked long hours a circumflex and often did not come home until late. His father owned warehouses, a construction company, a circumflex, a chain of stores, and 3 restaurants. It was their storance that kept him out late. A circumflex. Mike caught the bus home after we had finished cleaning up. He was going to talk to his dad when a circumflex he got home that night and asked him if he would teach us how to become rich. Mike promised a circumflex to call as soon as he had talked to his dad, even if it was late. The phone rang at 8:30 p.m. A circumflex. Okay, I said. Next Saturday. I put the phone down. Mike's dad had agreed to meet with using Saturday. A circumflex. I caught the 7:30 am bus to the poor side of town. The lessons begin. Mike and I met with a circumflex his dad that morning at 8 o'clock. He was already busy, having been at work for more a circumflex than an hour. His construction supervisor was just leaving in his pickup truck. As I walked up to a circumflex his simple, small, and tidy home, Mike met me at the door. Dad's on the phone end He said to wait a circumflex on the back porch, Mike said as he opened the door. The old wooden floor creaked as I stepped a circumflex across the threshold. Of the aging house there was a cheap mat just inside the door. The mat was there to hide the years of wear from a circumflex countless footsteps that the floor had supported out the clean. It needed to be replaced. I felt a circumflex claustrophobic. As I entered the narrow living room that was filled with old musty overstuffed a circumflex furniture that today would be collector's items sitting on the couch, were two women, both a little a circumflex older than my mom. Across from the women sat a man in workman's clothes. He wore khaki slacks and a circumflex khaki shirt neatly pressed, but without starch, amplest work boots. He was about 10 years older a circumflex than my dad. They smiled as Mike and I walked past them toward the back porch. I smiled back shyly. We circumflex are those people, I asked. Oh, they work for my dad. The older man runs his warehouses and the women a circumflex are the managers of the restaurants. And as you arrived you saw the construction supervisor who a circumflex was working on a road project about 50 miles from her. His other supervisor, who was building a circumflex. A track of houses left before you got here. Does this go on all the time? I asked. Not always a circumflex, but quite often, said Mike, smiling. As he pulled up a chair to sit down next to me, I asked my dad a circumflex if he would teach us to make money. Mike said, oh. And what did he say to that a circumflex? I asked with cautious curiosity. Well, he had a funny look on his face at first, a circumflex. And then he said he would make us an offer. Oh, I said, rocking my chair back against the wall. A circumflex. I sat there perched on two rear legs of the chair. Mike did the same thing. Do you know what the a circumflex offer is? I asked. No. But we'll soon find out. Suddenly Mike's dad burst through the a circumflex rickety screen door, and on top of the porch Mike and I jumped to our feet, not out a circumflex of respect, but because we were startled. Ready, boys? He asked, as he pulled up a chair a circumflex to sit down. With us we nodded our heads as we pulled our chairs away from the wall to sit in a circumflex front of him. He was a big man, about 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. My dad was taller, about the same a circumflex weight, and 5 years older than Mike's dad. They sort of looked alike, though not of the same a circumflex ethnic makeup maybe. Their energy was similar. Mike says, you want to learn to make money as a circumflex, that correct, Robert? I nodded my head quickly, but with a little trepidation. He had a circumflex lot of power behind his words and Smiliake. Here's my offer, I'll teach you. But I won't a circumflex do it classroom style. You work for me, I'll teach you. Y'all don't work for me, I won't teach you. I can a circumflex teach you faster if you work. And I'm wasting my time if y'all just want to sit and listen like you a circumflex do in school. That's my offer, take it or leave it. May I ask a question first? I asked. No, take it a circumflex, or leave it, I've got too much work to do to waste my time. If you can't make up your mind decisively a circumflex, then you'll never learn to make money anyway. Opportunities come and go. Being able to know a circumflex when to make quick decisions is an important skill. You have the opportunity that you asked for. A circumflex school is beginning, or it's over in 10 seconds, Mike's dad said with a teasing smile. Take a circumflex. That I said, take it, said Mike. Good, said Mike's dad. Mrs. Martin will be by in 10 minutes. After I'm a circumflex through with her, you'll ride with her to my super, and you can begin working. I'll pay you 10 cents a circumflex an hour, and you'll work 3 hours every Saturday. But I have a softball game today. I said. A circumflex. Mike's dad lowered his voice to a stern tone. Take it or leave it, he said. I'll take it, I replied. A circumflex, choosing to work and learn instead of playing 30 cents later. By 9, and that day Mike and a circumflex I were working for Mrs. Martin. She was a kind and patient woman. She always said that a circumflex Mike and I reminded her of her 2 grown sons. Although kind, she believed in a circumflex hard work and kept us moving. We spent 3 hours taking canned goods off a circumflex the shelves, brushing a kin with a feather duster to get the dust off, and then restacking a circumflex them neatly. It was excruciatingly boring work. Mike's dad, whom I called my rich dad a circumflex, owned 9 of these little super rats, each with a large parking lot. They were the a circumflex early version of the 7-Eleven convenience stores, little neighborhood grocery stores where people a circumflex bought items such as milk, bread, butter, and cigarettes. The problem was that this was Hawaii. A circumflex before air conditioning was widely used, and the stores could not close their doors because of the a circumflex heat in 2 sides of the store. The doors had to be wide open to the road and parking lot. Every time a circumflex a car drove by or pulled into the parking lot, dust would swirl and settle in the store. We knew a circumflex had a job as long as there was no air conditioning. For 3 weeks Mike and I reported to Mrs. Martin a circumflex and worked our 3 hours. By noon our work was over. She dropped 3 little dimes in a circumflex each of our hands. Now, even at the age of 9, in the mid-1950s, 30 cents was not too exciting. A circumflex comic books cost 10 cents back then, so I usually spent my money on comic books and went home by a circumflex Wednesday of the 4th week. I was ready to. Kitty had agreed to work only because I wanted to a circumflex learn to make money from Mike's dad, and now I was a slave for 10 cents an hour on top of that. I a circumflex had not seen Mike's dad since that first Saturday. Quittingi told Mike at lunchtime school was a circumflex boring, and now I did not even have my Saturdays to look forward to. But it was the 30 cents that a circumflex really got to me this time. Mike smiled. What are you laughing at? I asked with anger and frustration. A circumflex, Dad said this would happen. He said to meet with him when you were ready to quit. What? I said. A circumflex indignantly. He's been waiting for you to get fed up, sort of. Mike said. Dad's kind of different. He a circumflex doesn't teach like you or Dad. Your mom and Dad lecture a lot. My dad is quiet, And a man of a circumflex, few words, you just wait till this Saturday, I'll tell him you're ready, Yao Me, and I've been set up. No, a circumflex, not really. But maybe dad will explain on Saturday. Waiting in line on Saturday. Was ready to face a circumflex Mike's. Dad, even my real dad was angry with him, my real dad, the one I call Thepper. One thought a circumflex that my rich dad was violating child labor laws and should be investigated. My educated poor a circumflex dad told me to demand what I deserve, at least 25 cents an hour. My poor dad told me that if I a circumflex did not get a raise, I was to quit immediately. You don't need that damn job anyway, a circumflex, said my poor dad with indignation. At 8 o'clock Saturday morning, I walked through a circumflex the door of Mike's house. When Mike's dad opened it, "Take a seat and wait in line," he said as entered a circumflex. He turned and disappeared into his little office next to a bedroom. I looked around the room, a circumflex, and didn't see Mike anywhere. Feeling awkward, he cautiously sat down next to the same two a circumflex women who were there 4 weeks earlier. They smiled and slid down the couch to make room, a circumflex, for me. 45 minutes went by, and I was steaming. The two women had met with him and left 30 a circumflex minutes earlier. An older gentleman was in there for 20 minutes and was also gone. The house a circumflex was empty, and here I sat in a musty dark living room on a beautiful sunny Hawaii and waiting a circumflex to talk to a cheapskate who exploited children. I could hear him rustling around the office, a circumflex talking on the phone and ignoring me. I was ready to walk out, but for some reason I stayed, a circumflex. Finally, 15 minutes later, at exactly 9 o'clock, Rich Dad walked out of his office, said a circumflex nothing, and signaled with his hand for me to enter. I understand, y'all want to raise, or you're going to a circumflex quit, Rich Dad said as he swiveled in his office chair. Well, you're not keeping your end of the a circumflex bargain, I blurted out, nearly in tears. It was really frightening for me to confront a grown-up, a circumflex. You said that you would teach me if I worked for you. Well, I've worked for you, I've worked hard, a circumflex. I've given up my baseball games to work for y'all, but you haven't kept your word. And you haven't, a circumflex, taught me anything. You're a crook like everyone in town thinks you're greedy. You want all, a circumflex, the money, and don't take care of your employees. Y'all made me wait, and don't show me any respect, a circumflex. I'm only a little boy, but I deserve to be treated better. Rich Dad rocked back in his swivel, a circumflex chair, hands up to his chin, and stared at me. Not bad, he said. In less than a month you sound, a circumflex, like most of my employees. What? I asked, not understanding what he was saying. I continued with a circumflex, my grievance. I thought you were going to keep your end of the bargain and teach me. Instead, you want, a circumflex, to torture me. That's cruel, that's really cruel. I am teaching you, Rich Dad said quietly. What, a circumflex, have you taught me? Nothing, I said angrily. You haven't even talked to me once since I agreed to a circumflex work for peanuts, 10 cents an hour. I should notify the government about you. We have child labor laws, a circumflex. You know my dad works for the government. You know, wow, said Rich Dad. Now you sound just like most, a circumflex, of the people who used to work for me. People I've either fired or who have quit. So what do you, a circumflex, have to say? I demanded, feeling pretty brave for a little kid. Lied to me. I've worked for you, and a circumflex, you have not kept your word. You haven't taught me anything. How do you know that I've not taught you, a circumflex, anything? Asked Rich Dad calmly. Well, you've never talked to me. I've worked for 3 weeks, and you, a circumflex, have not taught me anything, I said with a pout. Does teaching mean talking or a lecture? Rich Dad, a circumflex, asked. Well, yes, I replied. That's how they teach you in school, said smiling. But that is not how a circumflex life teaches you, and I would say that life is the best teacher of all. Most of the time life does, a circumflex, not talk to you. It just sort of pushes you around. Each pushes life saying, wake up, a circumflex. There's something I want you to learn. What is this man talking about? I asked myself, a circumflex, silently. Life pushing me around. Was life talking to me now? I knew I had to quit my job. I was, a circumflex, talking to someone who needed to be locked up. If you learn life's lessons, you will do well. If, a circumflex, not, life will just continue to push you around. People do 2 things. Some just let life push them, a circumflex, around. Others get angry, push back, but they push back against their boss or their job or their, a circumflex, husband or wife. They do not know it's life that's pushing. I had no idea what he was talking about. A circumflex life pushes all of us around. Some people give up and there's fight. A few learn the lesson and, a circumflex, move on. They welcome life pushing them around. To these few people, it means they need and want to, a circumflex, learn something. They learn and move on. Most quit, and a few like you fight. Rich Dad stood and shut, a circumflex, the creaky old wooden window that needed repair. If you learn this lesson, you will grow into, a circumflex, wise, wealthy, and happy young man. If you don't, you will spend your life blaming a job, low pay, a circumflex, or your boss for your problems. You'll live life always shipping for that big break that, a circumflex, will solve all your money problems. Rich Dad looked over at me to see if it was still, a circumflex, listening. His eyes met mine. We stared at each other, communicating through our eyes. Finally, a circumflex, I looked away. Once I had absorbed his message, I knew he was right. I was blaming him, a circumflex, and I did ask to learn. I was fighting. Rich Dad continued. Or if you're the kind, a circumflex, of person who has no guts, you just give up every time life pushes you. If you're that kind of, a circumflex, person, you'll live all your life playing it safe, doing the right things, saving yourself for some, a circumflex, event that never happens. Then you die a boring old man. You'll have lots of friends who really like, a circumflex, you because you were such a nice hardworking guy. But the truth is that you let life push you into, a circumflex, submission. Deep down you were terrified of taking risks. You really wanted to win, but the fear of, a circumflex, losing was greater than the excitement of winning deep inside you. And only you will know you didn't a circumflex go for it, you chose to play it safe. Our eyes met again. You've been pushing me around. I asked. Some a circumflex people might say that smiled Rich Dad. I would say that it just gave you a taste of life. What taste a circumflex of life? I asked, still angry, but now curious and ready to learn. Yaboys are the first people that a circumflex have ever asked me to teach them how to make money. I have more than 150 employees, and not one a circumflex of them has asked me what I know about money. They ask me for a job and a paycheck, but never do a circumflex teach them about money, so most will spend the best years of their lives working for money, not really a circumflex understanding what it is they're working for. I sat there listening intently. So when Mike a circumflex told me you wanted to learn how to make money, I decided to design a course that mirrored real a circumflex life. I could talk until I was blue in the face, but you wouldn't hear a thing, so I decided to let a circumflex life push you around a bit so you could hear me. That's why I only paid you 10 cents. So hat is the a circumflex lesson I learned from working only 10 cents an hour. I asked that you're cheap and exploit your a circumflex workers. Rich Dad rocked back and laughed heartily. He said you'd best change your point of a circumflex. Romans 6. You stop blaming me and thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to a circumflex change me. If you realize that you're the problem, then you can change yourself. Learn something and a circumflex grow wiser. Most people want everyone else in the world to change, but themselves. Let me tell you, a circumflex, it's easier to change yourself than everyone else. I don't understand. I said, don't blame me for a circumflex your problems. Rich Dad said, growing impatient, but you only pay me 10 cents. So what are you a circumflex learning? Rich Dad asked, smiling. That you're cheap, I said with a sly grin. See, you think I'm the a circumflex problem, said Rich Dad. But you're well, keep that attitude and you'll learn nothing. Keep the a circumflex attitude that I'm the problem. And what choices do you have? Well, if y'all don't pay me more or show me a circumflex more respect and teach me, I'll quit. Well put, Rich Dad said. And that's exactly what most people do. A circumflex, they quit and go looking for another job, a better opportunity, and higher pay. Actually thinking that a circumflex this will solve the problem. In most cases, it won't. So what should I do? I asked. Just take a circumflex this measly 10 cents an hour and smile. Rich Dad smiled. That's what other people a circumflex do. But that's all they do, waiting for a raise, thinking that more money will solve a circumflex their problems. Most just accept it, and some take a second job working harder. A circumflex, but again accepting a small paycheck. I sat staring at the floor, beginning to a circumflex understand the lesson Rich Dad was presenting. He could sense it was a taste of life. Finally, a circumflex looked up and asked, so what will solve the problem? This, he said, leaning forward in his chair. A circumflex, and tapping me gently on the head. The stuff between your ears. It was at that moment that a circumflex Rick did shared the pivotal point of view that separated him from his employee San, my a circumflex poor dad, and led him to eventually become one of the richest men in Hawaii. While my highly a circumflex educated but poor dad struggled financially all his life, it was a singular point of view, a circumflex, that made all the difference over a lifetime. Rich Dad said this point of view over and over. A circumflex, which I call lesson number 1. The poor and the middle class work for money, the rich have money. A circumflex work for them. On that bright Saturday morning, I learned a completely different point of view, a circumflex, from what I had been taught by my poor dad at the age of 9. He understood that both a circumflex dads wanted me to learn. Both dads encouraged me to study, but not the same things. My highly a circumflex educated dad recommended that I do what he did. Son, I want you to study hard, get good grades, so you a circumflex can find a safe, secure job with a big company and make sure it has excellent benefits. My a circumflex rich dad wanted me to learn how money works so I could make it work for me. These lessons a circumflex I would learn through life with his guidance, not because of a classroom. My rich dad a circumflex continued. My first lesson, I'm glad you got angry about working for 10 cents, or if a circumflex you hadn't got angry and had simply accepted it, I would have to tell you that I could not. Each a circumflex, you see, true learning takes energy, passion, and a burning desire. Anger is a big part of that. A circumflex formula for passion is anger and love combined. When it comes to money, most people want to play a circumflex it safe and feel secure, so passion does not direct them, fear does. So is that why they'll take a circumflex jobs with low pay? I asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. Some people say I exploit people because I don't pay a circumflex as much as the sugar plantation or the government. I say the people exploit themselves. It's a circumflex their fear, not mine. But don't you feel you should pay them more? I asked. I don't have to. And a circumflex, besides, more money will not solve their problems. Just look at your dad. He makes a lot off money, a circumflex, and he still can't pay his bills. Most people given more money only get into more debt. So that's a circumflex why the 10 cents in our, I said, smiling. It's part off lesson. That's right, smiled Rich Dad. You a circumflex. See, your dad went to school and got an excellent education so he could get a high-paying job, but he a circumflex still has money problems because he never learned anything about money in school. On top of that, a circumflex, he believes in working for money. And you don't? I asked. No, not really, said Rich Dad. If you want a circumflex to learn to work for money, then stay in school. That is a great place to learn to do that. But if a circumflex you want to learn how to have money work for you, then it will teach you that. But only if you want to a circumflex learn. Wouldn't everyone want to learn that? I asked. No, said Rich Dad, simply because it's easier to a circumflex learn to work for money, especially if fear is your primary emotion when the subject of money is a circumflex discussed. I don't understand, I said with a frown. Don't worry about that for now, just know that a circumflex, it's fear that keeps most people Working at a job, the fear of not paying their bills, the fear of a circumflex, being fired, the fear of not having enough money, and theft, fear of starting over. That's the price of a circumflex. Studying to learn a profession or trade, and then working for money. Most people become a slave, a circumflex, to money, and then get angry at their boss. Learning to have money work for you is a circumflex completely different course of study? I asked. Absolutely. Rich Dad answered. Absolutely. Sat in a circumflex. The silence on that beautiful Hawaiian Saturday morning. My friends had just started their little a circumflex league baseball game, but for some reason I was no thankful. I had decided to work for 10 cents in a circumflex hour. I sensed that I was about to learn something me friends wouldn't learn in school. Ready to a circumflex learn? Asked Rich Dad. Absolutely, I said with a grin. I have kept my promise. I've been teaching you a circumflex from afar. My rich dad said. At 9 years old, you've got at a what it feels like a circumflex to work for money. Just multiply your last month by 50 years, and you will have an idea a circumflex of what most people spend their life doing. I don't understand. That how did you feel? A circumflex waiting in line to see me, wants to get hired and wants to ask for more money. Terrible, I said. A circumflex, if you choose to work for money, that is what life will be like, said Rich Dad. And how did you feel? A circumflex, when Mrs. Martin dropped 3 dimes in your hand for 3 hours of work. I felt like it wasn't a circumflex enough. It seemed like nothing. I was disappointed, I said. And that issue most employees feel a circumflex when they look at their paychecks, especially after all the tax and other deductions a circumflex are taken out. At least you got 100%. You mean most workers don't get paid everything? I a circumflex asked with amazement. Heavens no, said Rich Dad. The government always takes its share first. How do a circumflex they do that? I asked. Taxes, said Rich Dad. You're taxed when you earn, you're taxed when you spend. A circumflex, you're taxed when you save, you're taxed when you die. Why do people let the government do that to them? A circumflex, the rich don't, said Rich Dad with a smile. The poor and middle class do. I'll bet you that earn more than your dad, yet he pays more in taxes. How can that be? I asked. At my age, that made no a circumflex sense to me. Why would someone let the government do that to them? Rich Dad rocked slowly and a circumflex silently in his chair, just looking at me, ready to learn. I nodded my head slowly. A circumflex, as I said, there's learning how to have money work for you is a lifetime a circumflex study. Most people go to college for 4 years, and their education ends. I already know that my a circumflex study of money will continue over my lifetime, simply because the more I find out a circumflex, the more I find out I need to know. Most people never study the subject. They go to a circumflex work, get their paycheck, balance their checkbooks, and that's it. Then they wonder why they have money a circumflex problems. They think that more money will solve the problem, and don't realize that it's their a circumflex lack of financial education that is the problem. So my dad has tax problems because he doesn't a circumflex understand money. I asked, confused. Look, said Rich Dad, taxes are just one small section a circumflex on learning how to have money work for you today. I just wanted to find out if you a circumflex still have the passion to learn about money. Most people don't. They want to go to school, learn a circumflex a profession, have fun at their work, and earn lots of money. One day they wake up with big money a circumflex problems, and then they can't stop working. That's the price of only knowing how to work for money a circumflex instead of studying how to have money work for you. So do you still have the passion to learn? Asked a circumflex. Rich Dad, I nodded my head. Good, said Rich Dad. Now get back to work. This time I will pay you a circumflex. Nothing. What? I asked in amazement. You heard me. Nothing. Yeah, will work the same 3 hours every a circumflex Saturday, but this time you will not be paid 10 cents per hour. Yao said you wanted to learn to a circumflex, not work for money, so I'm not going to pay you anything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A circumflex, I've already had this conversation with Mike, and he's already working dusting and stacking canned a circumflex goods for free. You better hurry and get back there. That's not fair, I shouted. You've got to a circumflex pay something you said you wanted to learn. If you don't learn this, no, you'll grow up a circumflex to be like the 2 women and the older man sitting in my living room working for money. A circumflex and hopping. I don't fire them, or like your dad earning lots of money only to be in debt up to his a circumflex eyeballs. Hopping more money will solve the problem. If that's what you want, I'll go back to our a circumflex original deal of 10 cents an hour. Or you can do what most adults do, complain that there's not a circumflex enough pay, quit, and go looking for another job. But what do? I asked. Rich Dad tapped me on a circumflex the head. Use this, he said. If you use it well, you will soon thank me for giving you an a circumflex opportunity, and you will grow into a rich man. I stood there still not believing what arrow a circumflex deal I was handed. I came to ask for a raise, and somehow I was instead working for nothing. A circumflex. Rich Dad tapped me on the head again and said, just this, now get out of here and get back to work. A circumflex lesson number 1: the rich don't work for money. I didn't tell my poor dad I wasn't being paid. He a circumflex wouldn't have understood, and I didn't want to try to explain something I didn't understand myself. A circumflex for 3 more weeks. Mike and I worked 3 hours every Saturday for nothing. The work didn't a circumflex bother me, and the routine got easier, but it was the missed baseball games and not being able a circumflex to afford to buy a few comic books that got to marriage. Dad stopped by at noon on the 3rd week. We a circumflex heard his truck pull up in the parking lot and sputter when the engine was turned off. He entered a circumflex the store and greeted Mrs. Martin with a hug. After finding out how things were going in the a circumflex store, he reached into the ice cream freezer, pulled out 2 bars, paid for them, and signaled a circumflex to Mike and me. Let's go for a walk, boys. We crossed the street, dodging a few cars, and walked a circumflex across a large grassy field where a few adults were playing Softball sitting down at a lone A-circumflex picnic table. He handed Mike and me the treat. Shows it going, boys? Okay, Mike said. I nodded. An A-circumflex agreement. Learn anything yet? Rich Dad asked. Mike and I looked at each other, shrugged our A-circumflex shoulders, and shook our heads in unison, avoiding one of life's biggest traps. Well, you A-circumflex boys had better start thinking you're starring at one of life's biggest lessons. If you learn at A-circumflex, you'll enjoy a life of great freedom. Security. If you don't, you'll wind up like Mrs. Martin and A-circumflex. Most of the people playing softball in this park, they work very hard for little money, clinging A-circumflex to the illusion of job security and looking forward to a 3-week vacation each year. And A-circumflex may be a skimpy pension after 45 years of service. If that excites you, I'll give you a raise A-circumflex to 25 cents an hour. But these are good hard-working people. Are you making fun of them? A-circumflex? I demanded. A smile came over Rich Dad's face. Mrs. Martin is like a mother to him. I would never be A-circumflex. That cruel. I may sound unkind, because I'm doing my best to point something out to the two of you. I A-circumflex want to expand your point of view, so you can see something most people never have the benefit A-circumflex of seeing because their vision is too narrow. Most people never see the trap they are in. A-circumflex. Mike and I sat there uncertain of his message. He sounded cruel, yet we could sense A-circumflex he was trying to drive home a point. With a smile, Rich Dad said, doesn't that 25 cents A-circumflex an hour sound good? Doesn't it make your heart beat a little faster? I shook my head. No. But literally, A-circumflex, did 25 cents an hour would be big bucks to me. Okay, I'll pay you $1 an hour, Rich Dad said. A-circumflex with a sly grin. Now my heart started to race. My brain was screaming, take it. I A-circumflex could not believe you had. I was hearing still. He said nothing. Okay, $2 an hour A-circumflex. My little brain and heart nearly exploded. After all, it was 1956. And being paid $2 A-circumflex an hour would have made me the richest kid in the world. I couldn't imagine earning that kind A-circumflex of money. I wanted to say yes, I wanted the deal. I could picture a new bicycle, a new baseball A-circumflex glove, and the adoration of my friends when I flashed some cash on top of that. Jimmy and A-circumflex, his rich friends, could never call me poor again, but somehow my mouth stayed shut. The ice A-circumflex cream had melted and was running down my hand. Rich Dad was looking at two boys staring A-circumflex back at him, eyes wide open and brains empty. He was testing us, and he knew there was a part A-circumflex of our emotions that wanted to take the deal. He understood that every person has a weak and A-circumflex needy part of their soul that can be bought, and he knew that every individual also had A-circumflex a part of their soul that was resilient and could never be bought. It was only a question of A-circumflex which one was stronger. Okay, $5 an hour. Suddenly I was silent. Something had changed. A-circumflex, the offer was too big and ridiculous. Not many grown-ups in 1956 made more than that. But quickly, A-circumflex, my temptation disappeared. And calm said, and slowly I turned to my left to look at Mike. He looked back. A-circumflex at me. The part of my soul that was weak and needy was silenced. The part of me that had no price. A-circumflex took over. I knew Mike had got to that point. Too good, said Rich Dad softly. Most people have a A-circumflex price, and they have a price because of human emotions named fear and greed. First, the fear of A-circumflex being without money motivates us to work hard, and then, once we get that paycheck, greed or desire A-circumflex starts us thinking about all the wonderful things money can buy. The pattern is then set. What pattern? A-circumflex. I asked. The pattern of get up, go to work, pay bills. Get up, go to work, pay bills. People's lives A-circumflex forever controlled by two emotions, fear and greed, offer them more money, and they A-circumflex continue the cycle by increasing their spending. This is what I call the rat race. There is A-circumflex another way, Mike asked. Yes, said Rich Dad slowly, but only a few people find it. And what is that way? A-circumflex, Mike asked. That's what I hope you boys will learn as you work and study with me. That A-circumflex is I took away all forms of pain. Any hints? Mike asked. We're kind of tired A-circumflex of working hard, especially for nothing. Well, the first step is telling the truth, said Rich A-circumflex. We haven't been lying. I said. I did not say you were lying. I said to tell that truth. Rich Dad A-circumflex retorted the truth about what I asked. How you're feeling? Rich Dad said. You don't have toss A-circumflex it anyone else, just admit it to yourself. You mean the people in this park, the people who A-circumflex work for you, Mrs. Martin? They don't do that. I asked. I doubt it, said Rich Dad. Instead, they feel the A-circumflex fear of not having money. They don't confront it logically. They react emotionally instead of A-circumflex using their heads. Rich Dad said. Then they get a few bucks in their hands, and again the emotions A-circumflex of joy, desire, and greed take over, and again they react instead of think. So their emotions control A-circumflex, their brain. Mike said. That's correct, said Rich Dad. Instead of admitting truth about how they feel A-circumflex, they react to their feelings and fail to think. They feel the fear, so they go to work hoping A-circumflex that money will soothe the fear. But it doesn't. It continues to haunt them, and they return to A-circumflex work hopping again. That money will calm their fear. Send again. It doesn't. Fear keeps them in this trap A-circumflex of working, earning money, hoping the fear will go away. But every day they A-circumflex get up, and that old fear wakes up with them. For millions of people, that old fear keeps them A-circumflex awake all night, causing a night of turmoil and worry. Sathi get up and go to work hoping A-circumflex that a paycheck will kill that fear gnawing at their souls. Money is running their lives A-circumflex, and they refuse to tell the truth about that money is in control of their emotions and their A-circumflex souls. Rich Dad sat quietly, letting his words sink in. Mike and I had heard what he said, but A-circumflex didn't understand fully what he was talking about. I just knew that I often wondered why grown-ups A-circumflex hurried off to work. It did not seem like much fun and they never looked that happy. But something A Circumflex kept them going, realizing we had absorbed as much as possible of what he was talking about. A Circumflex, Rich Dad said, I want you boys to avoid that trap. That is really what I want to teach you, not A Circumflex, just to be rich. Because being rich does not solve the problem. It doesn't. I asked, surprised. No, A Circumflex. It doesn't let me explain the other emotion, desire. Some call it greed. But I prefer desire. It's A Circumflex, perfectly normal to desire something better, prettier, more fun or exciting. So people A Circumflex also work for money because of desire. They desire money for the joy they think it A Circumflex can buy, but the joy that money brings is often short-lived, and they soon need more money for more A Circumflex, joy, more pleasure, more comfort, and more security. So they keep working thinking money will soothe A Circumflex their souls that are troubled by fear and desire. But money can't do that. Even rich people doth as A Circumflex. Mike asked. Rich people included, said Rich Dad. In fact, the reason many rich people are rich A Circumflex isn't because of desire, but because of fear. They believe if that money can eliminate the fear A Circumflex of being poor, so they amass tons of it, only to find the fear gets worse. Now they fear losing the A Circumflex money. I have friends who keep working even though they have plenty. People who have millions A Circumflex who are more afraid now than when they were poor. They're terrified of losing it all. A Circumflex, the fears that drove them to get rich, got worse. That weak and needy part of A Circumflex, their soulies actually screaming louder. They don't want to lose the big houses, the A Circumflex cars, and the high life money has bought them. They worry about what their friends A Circumflex would say if they lost all their money. Many are emotionally desperate and neurotic A Circumflex, although they look rich and have more money. So is a poor man happier? I ask. No, I don't think A Circumflex. So replied Rich Dad. The avoidance of money is just as psychotic as being attached to money as A Circumflex. If on cue the town derelict went past our table, stopping by the large rubbish can and rummaging A Circumflex around in it, the three of us watched him with great interest, when before we probably would have A Circumflex just ignored him. Rich Dad pulled $1 out of his wallet and gestured to the older man. Seeing A Circumflex the money, the derelict came over, immediately took. Thebel thanked Rich Dad profusely, and A Circumflex hurried off ecstatic with his good fortune. He's not much different from most of my employees, A Circumflex said Rich Dad. I've met so many people who say, oh, I'm not interested in money, yet they'll work A Circumflex at a job for 8 hours a day. That's a denial of truth. If they weren't interested in money, A Circumflex, then why are they working that kind of thing? Kingi's probably more psychotic than a person who A Circumflex hoards money. As I sat there listening to my Rich Dad, my mind flashed back to the countless A Circumflex times my own dad said, I'm not interested in money. He said those words often. He also covered himself, A Circumflex, by always saying, I work because I love my job. So what do we do? I asked. Not work for money, A Circumflex, until all traces of fear and greed are gone. No, that would be a waste of time, said Rich Dad. A Circumflex emotions are what make us human. The word emotion stands for energy in motion. Be truthful about your A Circumflex emotions, and use your mind and emotions in your favor, not against yourself. Whoa, said A Circumflex. Mike, don't worry about what I just said. It will make more sense in years to come. Just A Circumflex, be an observer, not a reactor to your emotions. Most people do not know that it's their A Circumflex emotions that are doing the thinking. Your emotions are your emotions, but you've A Circumflex got to learn to do your own thinking. Can you give me an example? I asked. Sure, replied Rich A Circumflex Dad. When a person says I need to find a job, it's most likely an emotion doing the thinking. A Circumflex fear not having money generates that thought, but people do need money if they have bills to pay. A Circumflex, I said. Sure they do, smiled Rich Dad. All I'm saying is that it's fear that is all A Circumflex too often doing the thinking. I don't understand, said Mike. For example, said Rich A Circumflex Dad, if the fear of not having enough money arises, instead of immediately running out to get a job, A Circumflex, they instead might ask themselves this question: will a job be the best solution to this fear? A Circumflex over the long run, in my opinion, the answer is no. A job is really a short-term solution to A Circumflex long-term problem. But my dad is always saying stay in school and get good grades so you can A Circumflex find a safe, secure job. I interjected, somewhat confused. I understand. He says that, said A Circumflex. Rich Dad smiling. Most people recommend that, and it's a good path for most people, but people A Circumflex make that recommendation primarily out of fear. You mean my dad says that because he's afraid? Yes, A Circumflex, said Rich Dad. He's terrified that you won't earn enough money and won't fit into society. Don't get A Circumflex me wrong. He loves you and wants the best for you too. Believe in education and a job are A Circumflex important, but it won't handle the fear. You see, that same fear that makes him get up A Circumflex in the morning to earn a few bucks is the fear that is causing him to be A Circumflex so fanatical about your going to school. So what do you recommend? I asked. I want to teach A Circumflex you to master the power of money instead of being afraid of it. They don't teach that in school, A Circumflex, and if you don't learn it, you become a slave to money. It was finally making sense. He wanted us A Circumflex to widen our views and to see what the Mrs. Martinsoff this world couldn't see. He used examples that A Circumflex sounded cruel at the time, but I've never forgotten them. My vision widened that day and I began A Circumflex to see the trap that lay ahead for most people. You see, we're all employees. Ultimately we A Circumflex just work at different levels, said Rich Dad. I just want you boys to have a chance to avoid the A Circumflex trap caused by those two emotions, fear and desire. Use them in your favor, not against you. A Circumflex, That's what I want to teach you. I'm not interested in just teaching you to make a pile A circumflex of money that won't handle the fear or desire. If you don't first handle fear and desire and A circumflex, you get rich, you'll only be a highly paid slave. So how do we avoid the trap? I asked. The main A circumflex cause of poverty. Financial struggle is fear and ignorance, not the economy or the government or the A circumflex. Rich, it's self-inflicted fear and ignorance that keep people trapped. So you boys go to school in A circumflex, get your college degrees, and I'll teach you how to stay out of the trap. The pieces of the puzzle A circumflex were appearing. My highly educated dad had a great education and a great career, but school never A circumflex told him how to handle money or his fear of it. It became clear that I could learn different and A circumflex important things from two fathers. So you've been talking about the fear of not having money. How A circumflex does the desire for money affect our thinking? Mike asked. How did you feel when I tempted you with a circumflex pay raise? Did you notice your desires rising? We nodded our heads. Be not giving into your emotions A circumflex. You were able to delay your reactions and think that is important. We will always have emotions of A circumflex fear and greed from here on, and it's imperative for you to use those emotions to your advantage in A circumflex for the long term, to not let your emotions control your thinking. Most people use fear and greed A circumflex against themselves. That's the start of ignorance. Most people live their lives chasing paychecks, pay A circumflex raises, and job security because of the emotions of desiring fear, not really questioning where those A circumflex emotion-driven thoughts are leading them. It's just like the picture of a donkey dragging a cart, with A circumflex, its owner dangling a carrot just in front of its nose. The donkey's owner may be going where he A circumflex wants to, but the donkey is chasing an illusion. Tomorrow there will only be another carrot for A circumflex. The donkey. You mean the moment I pictured a new baseball glove, candy, and toys that's like a circumflex carrot to a donkey? Mike asked. Yes. And as you get older, your toys get more expensive. A new car, A circumflex, a boat, and a big house to impress your friends, said rich dad with a smile. Fear pushes you out A circumflex the door, and desire calls to you. That's the trap. So what's the answer? Mike asked. What intensifies A circumflex fear and desire is ignorance. That is why rich people with lots of money often have more fear. The A circumflex richer they get, money is the carrot, the illusion. If the donkey could see the whole picture, it A circumflex might rethink its choice to chase the carrot. Rich dad went on to explain that a human's life is A circumflex a struggle between ignorance and illumination. He explained that once a person stops searching for A circumflex information and self-knowledge, ignorance sets in. That struggle is a moment-to-moment A circumflex decision to learn to open or close one's mind. Look, school is very important. Yao go A circumflex to school to learn a skill or profession, to become a contributing member of society. Every culture A circumflex needs teachers, doctors, mechanics, artists, cooks, business people, police officers, A circumflex firefighters, and soldiers. Schools train them so society can thrive and flourish, said rich dad. A circumflex, unfortunately for many people, school is the end, not the beginning. There was a long silence. A circumflex rich dad was smiling. I didn't comprehend everything he said that day, but as with most great A circumflex teachers, his words continued to teach for years. I've been a little cruel today, said rich dad. A circumflex, but I want you to always remember this talk. I want you to always think of Mrs. Martin, and I A circumflex want you always to remember that donkey. Never forget that fear and desire can lead you into A circumflex life's biggest trap if you're not aware of them controlling your thinking. To spend your life A circumflex living in fear, never exploring your dreams, is cruel. To work hard for money thinking that it A circumflex will buy you things that will make you happy is also cruel. To wake up in the middle of A circumflex night terrified about paying bills is a horrible way to live. To live a life dictated by the size A circumflex of a paycheck is not really living a life. Thinking that a job makes you secure is lying to yourself. A circumflex, that's cruel, and that's the trap I want you to avoid. I've seen how money runs people's lives. A circumflex, don't let that happen to you. Please don't let money run your life. A softball rolled under our A circumflex table. Rich dad picked it up and threw it back. So what does ignorance have to do with greed, A circumflex, and fear? I asked. Because it is ignorance about money that causes so much greed and fear, A circumflex, said rich dad. Let me give you some examples. A doctor wanting more money to better provide for A circumflex his family raises his fees. By raising his fees, it makes health care more expensive for E. Brion at A circumflex hurts the poor people the most, so they have worse health than those with money. Because the doctors A circumflex raise their fees, the attorneys raise their fees because the attorneys' fees have gone up. School A circumflex teachers want a raise, which raises our taxes, and on and on. And on soon there will be such A circumflex a horrifying gap between the rich and the poor that chaos will break out, and another great A circumflex civilization will collapse. History proves the great civilization collapse. You in the gap A circumflex between the haves and have-nots is too great. Sadly, America is on that same course because we A circumflex haven't learned from history. We only memorize historical dates and names, not the lesson. A circumflex, aren't prices supposed to go up? I asked. In an educated society with a well-run government, A circumflex prices should actually come down. Of course, that is often only true in theory. Prices go up A circumflex because of greed and fear caused by ignorance. If schools taught people about money, there would A circumflex be more money and lower prices. But schools focus only on teaching people to work for money, not A circumflex how to harness money's power. But don't we hate business schools? Mike asked. And haven't you A circumflex encouraged me to go for my MBA? Yes, said rich dad. Budal too. Often business schools train A circumflex employees to become sophisticated bean counters. Heaven forbid a bean counter takes over A circumflex a business. Do is look at the numbers, fire people, and kill the business a circumflex. I know this because I hire bean counters. All they think about is cutting costs and raising a circumflex prices, which cause more problems. Bean counting is important. I wish more people knew it. But it too a circumflex is not the whole picture. Added Rich Dad Angrilisso. Is there an answer? Asked Mike. Yes, said a circumflex. Rich Dad, learn to use your emotions to think, not think with your emotions. When you boys a circumflex mastered your emotions by agreeing to work for free, I knew their washout. When you again resisted a circumflex your emotions, when I tempted you with more money, you were again learning to think in spite of a circumflex being emotionally charged. That's the first step. Why is that step so important? I asked. Well, a circumflex, that's up to you to find out. If you want to learn, I'll take you boys into the briar patch. A circumflex, a place almost everyone else avoids. If you go with me, you'll let go of the idea of working for a circumflex money, and instead learn to have money work for you. On what will we get if we go with you? What if a circumflex we agree to learn from you? What will we get? I asked. The same thing. Brer Rabbit got, said Rich. A circumflex. Dad, referring to the classic children's story. Is there a briar patch? Asked. Yes, said Rich. A circumflex. Dad, the briar patch is our fear and greed, confronting fear, weaknesses, and neediness. A circumflex, by choosing our own thoughts. Is the way out choosing our thoughts? Mike asked, puzzled eyes. A circumflex, choosing what we think rather than reacting to our emotions, instead of just getting up and a circumflex going to work. Because not having the money to pay your bills is scaring you. Ask yourself, is working a circumflex harder at this? The best solution to this problem: most people are too afraid to rationally think a circumflex things through, and instead run out the door to a job they had. A tar baby is in control. That's a circumflex. What I mean by choosing your thoughts. And how do we do that? Mike asked. That's what I will teach you. A circumflex, I'll teach you to have a choice of thoughts rather than a knee-jerk reaction like gulping down a circumflex your morning coffee and running out the door. Remember what I said before, a job is only a circumflex short-term solution to a long-term problem. Most people have only own problem in mind, and it's a circumflex short-term. It's the bills at the end of the month. The tar baby money controls their lives. Or should a circumflex I say the fear and ignorance about money controls it, so they do as their parents did. They get a circumflex up every day and go work for money, not taking the time to ask the question, is there another a circumflex way? Their emotions now control their thinking, not their heads. Can you tell the difference, a circumflex, between emotions thinking and the head thinking? Mike asked. Oh yes, I hear it all the time, said Rich. A circumflex. Dad, I hear things like, well, everyone has to work, or the crooks, or I'll get another job. A circumflex. I deserve this raise, you can't push me around, or I like this job because it's secure. No one. A circumflex asks, is there something I'm missing here? Which would break through the emotional a circumflex thought and give you time to think clearly. As we headed back to the store, Rich Dad, a circumflex, explained that the rich really did make money. He did not work for it. He went on to explain, a circumflex, that when Mike and I were casting 5-cent pieces out off-lead, thinking we were making money, a circumflex, we were very close to thinking the way the rich think. The problem was that creating money, a circumflex, is legal for the government and banks to do, but illegal for us to do. Are legal a circumflex ways to create money from nothing, he told us. Rich Dad went on to explain that the circumflex rich know that money is an illusion, truly like the carrot for the donkey. It's only a circumflex out of fear and greed that the illusion of money is held together by billions of people who a circumflex believe that money is real. It's not. Money is really made up itis, only because of the illusion, a circumflex, of confidence and the ignorance of the masses that this house of cards stands. He talked about the a circumflex gold standard that America was on, and that each dollar bill was actually a silver certificate. A circumflex. What concerned him was the rumor that we would someday go off the gold standard and our dollars, a circumflex, would no longer be backed by something tangible. If that happens, boys, all hell will break loose. A circumflex, the poor, the middle class, and the ignorant will have their lives ruined simply because they a circumflex will continue to believe that money is real, and that the company they work for, or the a circumflex government, will look after them. We really did not understand what Hugh was saying that day, a circumflex, but over the years, it made more and more sense seeing what others. Mrs. Heck climbed into a circumflex, his pickup truck, outside his convenience store. Rich Dad said, keep working, boys, but the sooner a circumflex you forget about needing a paycheck, the easier your adult life will be. Keep using your brain, work a circumflex for free, and soon your mind will show you ways off making money far beyond what I could ever pay you. A circumflex, you will see things that other people never see. Most people never see these opportunities because a circumflex, they're looking for money and security. So that's all they get. The moment you see one opportunity, a circumflex, you'll see them for the rest of your life. The moment you do that, I'll teach you something, a circumflex. Else learn this, and you'll avoid one of life's biggest traps. Mike Andy picked up our things, a circumflex, from the store and waved goodbye to Mrs. Martin. We went back to the park, to the same picnic bench, a circumflex, and spent several more hours thinking and talking. We spent the next week at school thinking, and a circumflex talking too. For 2 more weeks we kept thinking, talking, and working for free. At the end of the a circumflex second Saturday, I was again saying goodbye to Mr. Martin, looking at the comic book stand, a circumflex, with a longing gaze. The hard thing about not even getting 30 cents every Saturday was that I, a circumflex, didn't have any money to buy comic books. Suddenly, as Mrs. Martin said goodbye to Mike and me, I saw a circumflex her do something I'd never seen her do before. Ms. Martin was cutting the front page of a circumflex, the comic book, in half. She kept the top half of the comic book cover and threw the a circumflex rest of the book into a large cardboard box. When I asked her what she did, a circumflex, with comic books, she said, I throw them away. I give the top half of the cover A Circumflex back to the comic book distributor for credit when he brings in the new comics. He's coming A Circumflex in an hour, Mike. And I waited for Anwar. Soon the distributor arrived. And I asked him if we A Circumflex could have the comic books. To my delight, he said, "You can have them if you work for this store A Circumflex, and do not resell them." Remember our old business partnership? Well, Mike and I revived it using a Circumflex spare room in Mike's basement. We began pilling hundreds of comic books in that room. Soon our A Circumflex comic book library was open to the public. We hired Mike's younger sister, who loved to study, to A Circumflex be head librarian. She charged each child 10 cents admission to the library, which was open from 2:30 A Circumflex p.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day after school. Customers, children of the neighborhood, could read as A Circumflex many comics as they wanted in 2 hours. It was a bargain for them since a comic cost 10 cents A Circumflex each. And they could read 5 or 6 in 2 hours. Mike's sister would check the kids as they left to A Circumflex, make sure they weren't borrowing any comic books. She also kept the books, logging in how many kids A Circumflex showed up each day, who they were, and any comments they might have. Mike and I averaged $9 A Circumflex and 50 cents per week over a 3-month period. We paid his sister $1 a week and allowed A Circumflex her to read the comics for free, which she rarely did since she was always studying. Mike and A Circumflex, I kept our agreement by working in the store every Saturday and collecting all the comic books A Circumflex from the different stores. We kept our agreement to the distributor by not selling any comic A Circumflex books. We burned them once they got too tattered. We tried opening a branch office, but we A Circumflex could never quite find someone as trustworthy and dedicated as Mike's sister. At an early age, A Circumflex, we found out how hard it was to find good staff. 3 months after the library first opened A Circumflex, a fight broke out in the room. Some bullies from another neighborhood pushed their way in, and A Circumflex, Mike's dad, suggested we shut down the business, so our comic book business shut down. And we stopped A Circumflex working on Saturdays at the convenience store. But Rich Dad was excited because he had A Circumflex new things he wanted to teach us. He was happy because we had learned our first lesson A Circumflex so well. We learned to make money work for us by not getting paid for our work at the store. We A Circumflex were forced to use our imaginations to identify an opportunity to make money by starting A Circumflex, our own business, the comic book library. We were in control of our own finances, not A Circumflex dependent on an employer. The best part was that our business generated money for A Circumflex us, even when we weren't physically there. Our money worked for us instead of paying A Circumflex us money. Rich Dad had given us so much more. Chapter 2, Lesson 2, Why Teach Financial A Circumflex Literacy. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. In 1990, Mike took over his father's empire, and A Circumflex is in fact doing a better job than his dad. Did we see each other once or twice a year in the golf A Circumflex course? He and his wife are wealthier than you can imagine. Rich Dad's empire is in great hands, and A Circumflex Mike is now grooming his son to take his place as his dad had groomed us. In 1994, I retired A Circumflex at the age of 47, and my wife Kim was 37. Retirement does not mean not working for us. It A Circumflex means that barring unforeseen cataclysmic changes, we can work or not work, and our wealth grows A Circumflex automatically, staying ahead of inflation. Our assets are large enough to grow by A Circumflex themselves. It's like planting a tree. You water it for years, and then one day A Circumflex doesn't need you anymore. Its roots are implanted deep enough, then the tree provides shade for your A Circumflex enjoyment. Mike chose to run the empire, and it goes to retire. Whenever I speak to groups of people A Circumflex, they often ask what I would recommend that they do. How do I get started? Is there a book you would A Circumflex recommend? What should I do to prepare? My children, what is your secret to success? How do I make A Circumflex millions? Whenever I hear one of these questions, I'm reminded of the following A Circumflex story. The richest businessman in 1923. A group of our greatest leaders, A Circumflex richest businessmen, held a meeting at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. Among A Circumflex then were Charles Schwab, head of the largest independent steel company; Samuel Insull, A Circumflex president of the world's largest utility; Howard Hobson, head of the largest gas company; Ivar A Circumflex Kruger, president of International Match Company, one of the world's largest companies at that A Circumflex time; Leon Frazier, president of the Bank of International Settlements; Richard Whitney, A Circumflex president of the New York Stock Exchange; Arthur Cotton and Jesse Livermore, A Circumflex, two of the biggest stock speculators; and Albert Fall, a member of President Harding's A Circumflex cabinet. 25 years later, 9 of these titans ended their lives as follows. Schwab died A Circumflex penniless after living for 5 years on borrowed money. Insult died broke in a foreign land. A Circumflex and Kruger and Cotton also died broke. Hobson went insane. Whitney and Albert Fall were released from A Circumflex prison, and Frazier and Livermore committed suicide. I doubt if anyone can say what really happened A Circumflex to these men. If you look at the date 1923, it was just before the 1929 market crash and the Great A Circumflex Depression, which I suspect had a great impact on these men and their lives. The point is this: today A Circumflex, we live in times of greater and faster change than these men did. I suspect there will be many booms A Circumflex and busts in the coming years that will parallel the ups and downs these men faced. I am concerned A Circumflex that too many people are too focused on money and not on their greatest wealth, their education. A Circumflex If people are prepared to be flexible, keep an open mind and learn, they will grow richer and a circumflex richer despite tough changes. If they think money will solve problems, they will have a rough ride. A circumflex intelligence solves problems and produces money without financial intelligence. Is money a circumflex soon gone? Most people fail to realize that in life. It's not how much money you make, it's how a circumflex much money you keep. We've all heard stories of lottery winners who are poor then suddenly a circumflex rich. And then poor again, they win millions yet are soon back where they started. Or stories a circumflex of professional athletes who at the age of 24 are earning millions, but are sleeping under a circumflex a bridge 10 years later. I remember a story of a young basketball player who a year ago had a circumflex millions. Today at just 29 he claims his friend's attorney and accountant took his money, and he a circumflex was forced to work at a car wash for minimum wage, who was fired from the car wash because he refused a circumflex to take off his championship ring as he was whipping off the cars. His story made national news, and he a circumflex is appealing his termination, claiming hardship and discrimination. He claims that the ring is all he a circumflex has left, and if it was stripped away he'll crumble. I know so many people who became instant a circumflex millionaires, and while I am glad some people have become richer and richer, I caution them that a circumflex in the long run, it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep, and how many generations a circumflex you keep it. So when people ask where do I get started, or tell me how to get rich quick, they a circumflex often are greatly disappointed with my answer. I simply say to them what my rich dad a circumflex said to me when I was a little kid: if you want to be rich you need to be financially a circumflex literate. That idea was drummed into my head every time we were together. As I said, my educated dad a circumflex stressed the importance of reading books, while my rich dad stressed the need to master financial a circumflex literacy. If you are going to build the Empire State Building, the first thing you need to do is a circumflex dig a deep hole and pour a strong foundation. If you are going to build a home in the suburbs, all a circumflex you need to do is pour a 6-inch slab of concrete. Most people in their drive to get rich are trying a circumflex to build an Empire State Building on a 6-inch slab. Our school system, created in the agrarian a circumflex age, still believes in homes with no foundation. Dirt floors are still the rage, so kids graduate a circumflex from school with virtually no financial foundation. One day, sleepless and deep in debt in a circumflex suburbia, living the American dream, they decide that the answer to their financial a circumflex problems is to find a way to get rich quick. Construction on the skyscraper begins. It goes a circumflex up quickly, and soon instead of the Empire State Building we have the Leaning Tower of suburbia a circumflex. The sleepless nights return. As for Mike and me in our adult years, both of our choice were a circumflex possible because we were taught to pour a strong financial foundation when we were just kids. A circumflex accounting is possibly the most confusing, boring subject in the world, but if you want to be rich a circumflex long term, it could be the most important subject for rich dad. The question was how to take a boring a circumflex and confusing subject and teach it to kids. The answer he found was to make it simple by teaching a circumflex it in pictures. My rich dad poured a strong financial foundation for Mike and me. Since we a circumflex were just kids, he created a simple way to teach us. For years he only drew pictures and used few a circumflex words. Mike and I understood the simple drawings, the jargon, the movement of money, and then a circumflex. In later years rich dad began adding numbers. Today Mike has gone on to master much more a circumflex complex and sophisticated accounting analysis because he had to in order to run his empire. I am a circumflex not as sophisticated because my empire is smaller, yet we come from the same simple foundation a circumflex. Over the following pages we will discuss those same simple line drawings Mike's dad a circumflex created for us. Though basic, those drawings help guide two little boys in building great a circumflex sums of wealth on a solid and deep foundation. Rule number 1: you must know the difference a circumflex between an asset and a liability and buy assets. If you want to be rich, this is all you need to a circumflex. No, it is rule number 1. It is the only rule. These may sound absurdly simple, but most a circumflex people have no idea how profound this rule is. Most people struggle financially because they do a circumflex not know the difference between an asset and a liability. Rich people acquire assets, the poor and a circumflex middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets, said Rich Dad. When Rich Dad explained a circumflex this to Mike and me, we thought he was kidding. Here we were nearly teenagers and waiting for the a circumflex secret to getting rich, and this was his answer. It was so simple that we stopped for a long time. A circumflex, to think about it. What is an asset, asked Mike. Don't worry right now, said Rich Dad, just let the a circumflex idea sink, and if you can comprehend the simplicity, your life will have a plan and be financially a circumflex easy. It is simple, that is why the idea is missed. You mean all we need to know is what an asset a circumflex is, acquire them, and we'll be rich. I asked. Rich Dad nodded his head. It's that simple. If it's a circumflex that simple, how come everyone is not rich? I asked. Rich Dad smiled. Because people do not know the a circumflex difference between an asset and a liability. I remember asking, how could adults be so misguided? A circumflex, if it is that simple, if it is that important, we would everyone not want to find out it? A circumflex took Rich Dad only a few minutes to explain what assets and liabilities were. As an adult, a circumflex have difficulty explaining it to other adults. The simplicity of the idea escapes them. A circumflex, because they have been educated differently. They were taught by other educated a circumflex professionals, such as bankers, accountants, real estate agents, financial planners. A circumflex And so forth. The difficulty comes in asking adults to unlearn or become children again. An intelligent acircumflex adult often feels itis demeaning to pay attention to. Simplistic definitions. Rich Dad believed acircumflex in the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid, or keep it super simple. So he kept it simple for acircumflex us. And that made our financial foundation strong. So what causes the confusion? How could something acircumflex so simple be so screwed up? Why would someone buy an asset that was really a liability? The answer: acircumflex is found in basic education. We focus on the word literacy and not financial literacy. What defines acircumflex something to be an asset or a liability are not words. In fact, if you really want to be confused, acircumflex, look up the words asset and liability in the dictionary. I know the definition may sound good, acircumflex to trained accountant, but for the average person it makes no sense. But we adults are often too acircumflex proud to admit that something does not make sense to us young boys. Rich Dad said what defines acircumflex an asset are not words but numbers. And if you can't read the numbers, you can't tell an asset acircumflex from a hole in the ground. In accounting, Rich Dad would say it's not the numbers, but what the acircumflex numbers are telling you. It's just like words, it's not the words, but they story. Words are acircumflex telling you, if you want to be rich, you've got to read and understand numbers. If I heard that acircumflex once, I heard it 1,000 times from my rich dad. Andy also heard the rich acquire assets, and acircumflex the poor and middle class acquire liabilities. Here's how to tell the difference between acircumflex and asset and a liability. Most accountants and financial professionals do not agree with acircumflex, the definitions, but these simple drawings were the start of strong financial foundations. Fort Wo acircumflex young boys, an asset is something that puts money in my pocket. A liability is something that takes acircumflex money out of my pocket. This is really all you need to know. If you want to be rich, simply spend acircumflex your life buying assets. If you want to be poor or middle class, spend your life buying liabilities. Acircumflex illiteracy, both in words and numbers, is the foundation of financial struggle. If people are acircumflex having difficulties financially, there is something that they don't understand either in words acircumflex or numbers. The rich are rich because they are more literate in different areas than people acircumflex who struggle financially. So if you want to be rich and maintain your wealth, it's important to be acircumflex financially literate in words as well as numbers. Numbers alone mean little, just as words out of acircumflex context mean little. It's the story that counts in financial reporting. Reading numbers is looking for acircumflex the plot, the story of where the cash is flowing in 80% of most families. The financial acircumflex story paints a picture of hard work to get ahead. However, Thisfort is for not because they spend acircumflex their lives buying liabilities instead of assets. Everyone has living expenses, the need for food, acircumflex shelter, and clothing. It is the cash flow that tells the story of how a person handles their acircumflex money. The reason I started with the story of the richest men in America is to illustrate the flaw acircumflex in believing that money will solve all problems. That is why I cringe whenever I hear acircumflex people ask me how to get rich quicker or where they should start. I often hear acircumflex, I'm in debt so I need to make more money. But more money will often not solve the problem. In acircumflex fact, it may compound the problem. Money often makes obvious our tragic human flaws, putting a spotlight acircumflex on what we don't know. That is why all too often a person who comes into a sudden windfall off cash acircumflex, let's say an inheritance, a pay raise, or lottery winning, soon returns to the same financial mess acircumflex, if not worse than the mess they were in before. Money only accentuates the cash acircumflex flow pattern running in your head. If your pattern is to spend everything acircumflex, you get most likely an increase in cash will just result in an increase in spending. Thus acircumflex thessing a fool and his money is one big party. I have said many times that we go to school to acircumflex gain scholastic and professional skills, both of which are important. We learn to make money with acircumflex our professional skills. In the 1960s, when I was in high school, if someone did well academically, acircumflex people assumed this bright student would go on to be medical doctor, because it was the profession acircumflex with the promise of the greatest financial reward. Today doctors face financial challenges I wouldn't acircumflex wish on. My worst enemy: insurance companies taking control of the business, managed healthcare, acircumflex government intervention, and malpractice suits. Today kids want to be famous athletes, movie stars, acircumflex rock stars, beauty queens, or CEOs, because that is worth fame, money, and prestige. Or that is acircumflex the reason it is so hard to motivate kids in school today. They know that professional success acircumflex is no longer solely academic success as itons was because students leave school acircumflex without financial skills. Millions of educated people pursue their profession successfully, but acircumflex later find themselves struggling financially. They work harder but don't get ahead. What acircumflex is missing from their education is not how to make money, but how to manage acircumflex money. It's called financial aptitude, what you do with the money once you make it. Acircumflex how to keep people from taking it from you, how to keep it longer, and how to make that money acircumflex work hard for you. Most people don't understand why they struggle financially, because they don't acircumflex understand cash flow. A person can be highly educated, professionally successful, and financially acircumflex illiterate. These people often work harder than they need to, because they learned how to work hard acircumflex, but not how to have their money work hard for them. Story of how the quest for a financial acircumflex dream turns into a financial nightmare. The classic story of hardworking people has set a acircumflex pattern. recently married the happy, highly educated young couple, moves into one of their cramped A-circumflex rented apartments. Immediately they realize that they are saving money because two can live A-circumflex as cheaply as one. The problem is the apartment is cramped. They decide to save money to buy A-circumflex, their dream home. So they can have kids. They now have two incomes and they begin to focus on A-circumflex. Their careers, their incomes begin to increase. As their incomes go up, their expenses go up as well. A-circumflex, the number one expense for most people is taxes. Many people think it's income tax, but for most A-circumflex Americans, their highest tax is Social Security. As an employee, it appears as if the social A-circumflex security tax combined with the Medicare tax rate is roughly 7.5%, but it's really 15 since A-circumflex the employer must match the Social Security amount. In essence, it is money. The employer can't pay you A-circumflex. On top of that, you still have to pay income tax on the amount deducted from your wages. For social A-circumflex security tax, income you never received because it went directly to Social Security through A-circumflex withholding going back to the young couple. As a result of their incomes increasing, they decide to A-circumflex buy the house of their dreams. Once in their house, they have a new tax called property tax. Then they A-circumflex buy a new car, new furniture, and new appliances. To match their new house, all of a sudden they wake up A-circumflex, and their liabilities column is full of mortgage and credit card. Did their liabilities go up A-circumflex? They're now trapped in the rat race. Pretty soon a baby comes along, and they work harder. The process A-circumflex repeats itself. Higher incomes cause higher taxes also. Halid bracket creep. A credit card comes in A-circumflex. The mail they use it maxes out. A loan company calls and says their greatest asset, their home A-circumflex, has appreciated in value. Because their credit is so good, the company offers a bill consolidation A-circumflex loan and tells them the intelligent thing to do is clear off the high-interest consumer debt by A-circumflex paying off their credit card. And besides interest on their home is a tax deduction. They go for A-circumflex it and pay off those high-interest credit cards. They breathe a sigh of relief. Their credit cards A-circumflex are paid off. They've now folded their consumer debt into their home mortgage. Their payments go A-circumflex down because they extend their debt over 30 years. It is the smart thing to do. Their neighbor calls A-circumflex to invite them to go shopping. The Memorial Day sale and they promise themselves they'll A-circumflex just window shop, but they take a credit card just in case. I run in Tathai's young couple A-circumflex all the time. Their names change, but their financial dilemma is the same. They commito A-circumflex one of my talks to hear what I have to say. They ask me, can you tell us how to make more money A-circumflex? They don't understand that their trouble is really how they choose to spend the money they do. A-circumflex have itis caused by financial illiteracy and not understanding the difference between an A-circumflex asset and a liability. More money seldom solve Asomion's money problems. Intelligence solves A-circumflex problems. There's a saying a friend of mine says over and over to people in debt: if you find A-circumflex, you have dug yourself into a hole. Stop digging. As a child, my dad often told us that the Japanese A-circumflex were aware of three powers: the power of the sword, the jewel, and Themir. The sword symbolizes the A-circumflex power of weapons. America has spent trillions of dollars on weapons, and because of this is A-circumflex a powerful military presence. The world, the jewel, symbolizes the power of money. There is A-circumflex some degree of truth to the saying. Remember the golden rule: he who has the gold makes the rules. A-circumflex, the mirror, symbolizes the power of self-knowledge. His self-knowledge, according to Japanese A-circumflex legend, was the most treasured of the three. All too often the poor and middle class allow the A-circumflex power of money to control them by simply getting up and working harder, failing to ask themselves if A-circumflex what they do makes sense. They shoot themselves in the foot as they leave for work every morning by A-circumflex, not fully understanding money. The vast majority of people allow its awesome power to control them. A-circumflex, if they used the power of the mirror, they would have asked themselves, does this make sense? All A-circumflex too often, instead of trusting their inner wisdom, that genius inside most people, follow the crowd. A-circumflex, they do things because everybody else does them. They conform rather than question. Often they A-circumflex mindlessly repeat what they have been told. Diversify. Your home is an asset. Your home is A-circumflex your biggest investment. You get a tax break for going into greater debt. Get a safe A-circumflex job. Don't make mistakes. Don't take risks. It is said that the fear of public speaking A-circumflex is a fear greater than death for most people. According to psychiatrists, the fear of public A-circumflex speaking is caused by the fear of ostracism, the fear of standing out, the fear of criticism, the A-circumflex fear of ridicule, and the fear of being an outcast. The fear of being different prevents most people A-circumflex from seeking new ways to solve their problems. That is why my educated dad said the Japanese A-circumflex valued the power of the mirror the most, for it is only when we look into it that we find A-circumflex truth. Fear is the main reason that people say play it safe, that goes for anything. It A-circumflex sports, relationships, careers, or money. It is that same fear, the fear of ostracism, that A-circumflex causes people to conform to and not question commonly accepted opinions or popular trends. Your A-circumflex home is an asset. Get a bill consolidation loan and get out of debt. Work harder. It's a promotion. A-circumflex, someday I'll be a vice president. Save money. When I get a raise, I'll buy us a bigger house. A-circumflex mutual funds are safe. Many financial problems are caused by trying to keep up with the Joneses. A-circumflex, occasionally we all need to look in the mirror and be true to our inner wisdom rather than our A-circumflex fears. By the time Mike and I We're 16 years old. We began to have problems in school. We were not a circumflex bad kids. We just began to separate from the crowd. We worked for Mike's dad after school. In a circumflex on weekends, Mike and I often spent hours after work just sitting at a table with his a circumflex dad. While he held meetings with his bankers, attorneys, accountants, brokers, investors, managers, a circumflex, and employees, here was a man who had left school at 13, who was now directing, instructing a circumflex, ordering, and asking questions of educated people. He came at his back and call, and a circumflex cringed when he didn't approve of them. Here was a man who had not gone along with the a circumflex crowd. He was a man who did his own thinking and detested the words "we have to do it this way a circumflex" because that's the way everyone else does it. He also hated the word can't. If ya wanted him to a circumflex do something, just say, "I don't think you can do it, Mike." And I learned more sitting in on his meetings a circumflex than we did in all our years of school. College included. Mike's dad was not book smart, but was a circumflex, financially educated and successful. As a result, held us over and over again. An intelligent person, a circumflex, hires people who are more intelligent than he is. Saw Mike and I had the benefit of spending hours a circumflex listening to and learning from intelligent people, but because of this, Mike and I couldn't go along a circumflex with the standard dogma our teachers preached, and that caused problems. Whenever the teacher a circumflex said, "If you don't get good grades, you won't do well in the real world," Mike and I just raised a circumflex our eyebrows when we were told to follow set procedures and not deviate from the rules. We a circumflex could see how school discouraged creativity, started to understand why our rich dad told a circumflex us that schools were designed to produce good employees instead of employers. Occasionally, Mike a circumflex or I would ask our teachers how what we studied was applicable to the real world, or why a circumflex we never studied money, and how it worked. To the latter question, we often got a circumflex the answer that money was not important, that if we excelled in our education, a circumflex money would follow. The more we knew about the power of money, the more distant we a circumflex grew from the teachers and our classmates. Me, highly educated dad, never pressured me about a circumflex my grades, but we did begin to argue about money. The time I was 16, I probably had a far a circumflex better foundation with money than both my parents. I could keep books. I listened to a circumflex tax accountants, corporate attorneys, bankers, real estate brokers, investors, and so forth. A circumflex. By contrast, my dad talked to other teachers. One day my dad told me that our home was a circumflex, his greatest investment. A not too pleasant argument took place when I showed him why a circumflex. I thought a house was not a good investment. He showed him the ancillary expenses a circumflex that went along with owning the home. A bigger home meant bigger expenses, and a circumflex, the cash flow kept going out through the expense column. Today people still challenge a circumflex me on the idea of a house not being an asset. I know that for many people it is their dream as a circumflex, well as their largest investment. In owning your own home is better than nothing. I simply offer an a circumflex alternative way of looking at this popular dogma. If my wife and I were to buy a bigger, flashier a circumflex house, we realize it wouldn't be an asset, it would be a liability, since it would take money a circumflex out of our pocket. So here is the argument I put forth. I really don't expect most people a circumflex to agree with it, because your home is an emotional thing, and when it comes to high a circumflex, emotions tend to lower financial intelligence. I know from personal experience that money has a circumflex a way of making every decision emotional one. When it comes to houses, most people work all their a circumflex lives paying for a home they never own. In other words, most people buy a new house every few years a circumflex, each time incurring a new 30-year loan to pay off the previous one. Too, even though people receive a circumflex a tax deduction for interest on mortgage payments, they pay for all our other expenses with after a circumflex tax dollars, even after they pay off their mortgage. 3 Me wife's parents were shocked when the a circumflex property taxes on their home increased to $1,000 a month. This was after the a circumflex had retired, so the increase put a strain on their retirement budget, and they felt forced to a circumflex move. 4 Houses do not always go up in value. I have friends who owe $1 million for a circumflex a home that today would for far less. 5 The greatest losses of all are those from a circumflex missed opportunities. If all your money is tied up in your house, you may be forced to work harder a circumflex, because your money continues blowing out of the expense column instead of adding to the asset a circumflex column. The classic middle class cash flow pattern. If a young couple would put more money into their a circumflex asset column early on, their later years would be easier. Their assets would have grown and would be a circumflex available to help cover expenses. All too often a house online serves as a vehicle for incurring a circumflex home equity loan to pay for mounting expenses. In summary, the end result in making a decision a circumflex to own a house that is too expensive in lieu of starting an investment portfolio impacts an a circumflex individual in at least the following 3 ways. 1 Loss of time, during which other assets could a circumflex have grown in value. 2 Loss of additional capital, which could have been invested instead of paying a circumflex for high maintenance expenses related directly to the home. 3 Loss of education. Too often people a circumflex count their house and savings and retirement plans as all they have in their asset column a circumflex, because they have no money to invest. They simply don't invest. This costs them a circumflex investment experience. Most never become what the investment world calls a sophisticated investor a circumflex, and the best investments are usually first sold to sophisticated investors who then turn around a circumflex and sell them to the people playing it safe. I am not saying don't buy a house. What saying is that you should understand the difference between an asset and a liability. When a circumflex I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house. My a circumflex educated dad's personal financial statement. This demonstrates the life of so.